Hello again, fellow druids. This episode, I actually have a question or topic. I guess it's a topic, not a question so much. They're both. From a viewer, and in short, I've titled this as a meta discussion: how to prepare. And then you can see in the notes I say, how do you prepare for games from things you've not seen, and how do you handle being a game against something that you're not familiar with? Well, first, let's be clear. The more games you get and the more experience you get, the better you're going to be. So I just want to get that out there right away, that that's obviously going to continue to be true. Nothing I say will make that not better, right? If you can play 10 games against something, you'll be better off than if you're going off of theory. But this game has like 1,500 different model units, and I think the big original factions are rounding the corner on about 20 Warcasters at this point, and the smaller ones are anywhere from 5 to a dozen. So there's a lot of different stuff, a lot of different synergies, a lot of different things out there that you have to account for. Now, Privateer's actually done a pretty solid job trying to shore up a lot of the absolute like crazy gotchas. As Circle, we're familiar with the fact that we lost the double teleport back in Mark II. That was part of that. And there's a few other things, but that's just one example. But there's a lot of attempts to take out a lot of the negative play experience, a lot of the gotchas. That doesn't mean they won't happen, but and by that I don't mean like something won't get you. But a lot of the ones that were very tilting have tended to be removed. So, but the question still remains: what do we do, or how do we prepare for this? So the first thing is, if we're talking about if we're talking about serious tournament play, you need to probably you could do this multiple ways. I think the easiest way is to buy War Room. Or buy all the decks on War Room, and reason being that you just need to spend some time reading through all of the decks, all of the cards. And you don't have to do this all at once. In fact, I don't do it all at once because I don't think it will really solidify for you. But like from time to time, especially if it's a faction you've not really seen, or maybe a good time for it is when so if you and this is another resource, but if you take a look at something like the Discount Games Inc. Tournament listing, and if you see a list in the top 3, maybe build that in War Room and look through the cards and try to like sort of think for yourself like why that list was built, and take note of the abilities in there. So like Rasheth, who pops it up from time to time, if you don't have a Scorn player locally, you probably don't know what he does, but I'm actually in the same boat. But you can take a look at some of the cards in there and know things like, oh, well, there's 2 Extoller Soul Wards in here, so I need to keep in mind that stealth won't be as strong as I would like because of Eyeless Sight. There's a lot of ranged attacks in there, so I need to know kind of the ranges. I need to know what the battle engine does. It's a very potent piece for that faction. What's the caster do? What's the feat? What defensive tech do they have? What offensive tech do they have? Start looking at some of those. Look individually at the cards. Just keep in mind, we're going to get to this in a little bit, but you're not going to remember everything. But each time you sort of look at a few entries, and everybody's brain works a little bit differently. So this may not be the thing that works for you, but it might be. Just look and sort of like log some of that stuff away, and try to start looking at the things that are a little bit more meta dependent at first. So if you know a local plays a certain thing a lot, look at that. Or if you're going to conventions, look at Jay's list, or just wherever it is that you're concerned. Look through their stuff. Even theoretically, build a list with the stuff, with that faction. That you don't have to ever really have any intent to play it. Just build it. And just see if you can sort of put together some things, and like think about what's scary to your lists and things like that. But over time, if you sort of look at the cards a couple times and then add a couple tournaments in there, maybe a conversation with your buddies about a model unit, that'll be good. Well, that's a good place to start. Another thing to do. So once you're in the game, though, if you haven't done that and you're still sitting across from stuff, ask a lot of questions. Now, don't try to just don't do it to distract your opponent. That's crappy. But you know, certainly make sure you identify their caster first. Start asking questions. Ask to see their cards. Look at their. And in a lot of cases, or add it to your own war room while they're setting up. In a lot of cases, that's almost going to be better than asking your opponent, because your opponent may not understand what you're trying to discern, and it's not their job to do that. I mean, they have to answer honestly, like it's an open information game. They should answer you truthfully. But the question you have, you may be better off looking at the caster card or whatever card is relevant, especially once you're in the middle of the game. Don't ask them something like during their turn that's like, so, you know, can that thing do this? Like the thing you're scared of them doing, because maybe they weren't planning on doing that until you're like, oh, hey, can you blow this really important piece of mine up? And they're like, as a matter of fact, you know what? I can. And then they get really excited about it, and then they blow that thing up. So not that every time that will happen, and that doesn't necessarily mean not to ask it, but, you know, if you can avoid doing that, keep that in mind. Get a sense for what their threat ranges are. Definitely look at their feet, look at any of their special abilities, and see if there's any like sort of strange defensive tech or offensive tech that you hadn't accounted for. And then just watch your play. If you're in a game like that, you probably want to try to play safer. Also, you can sort of start combining these things and realize that certain types of trooper models have similar stats, right? Usually you can tell things that are small based and lightly armored are going to be faster. If they have a gun, you can kind of tell guns from melee weapons, get a sense for that. Usually you can get an idea that what the mat and rat values are of average troops. So now you just need to look for like things that fit outside of that curve. Get a sense for what their damage is, right? And you just want to combine these little bits to sort of understand enough of how the game is going to go. And then also understand how your game plays, right? Like what things absolutely counter what you're playing, what things can you definitely not play into, what things are you really strong into, what is a game plan that is safe but going to have a chance of winning you the game, and play in that way. And don't forget, there's always just the situation of if you're really not sure what to do in a game, be looking for an assassination the whole time, or be looking for the scenario win, right? Sometimes, the better the opponent gets, the harder these things are going to be, and the more you're going to be punished by running into a list that you don't understand. But that's not going to be everybody, and your best bet's still going to be what your best bet is. If you can get an early assassination against a list you're unsure of, cool. And then then you can go back and try to learn it maybe at your local shop or whatever. What else can you do for this? Those are kind of the big, the big two-ish, wasn't sort of clearly delineated, but two-ish factors that I can think of to start upping your familiarity. You also have the option to maybe, if there's a faction you have a lot of trouble with and you have access to an army, you could always consider playing a game or two with that and sort of see from the other side what they're looking at when they play into your faction or into the game. And you may have an assumption that say Trolls plays this way, but then once you start playing, they were like, oh wait, I'm seeing how certain things are more important to them, or how weaknesses, or like now you're seeing the things that you're worried about as that player, and you can remember that and be like, oh right, when I was playing Trolls, I knew that I needed to keep the Creelstone completely safe from his RFP, or I'd lose it for the whole game, as an example. And in general, read a card. If you're like, oh, I've never seen this model, read the card. Ask the questions. Try to clarify anything that sounds weird with your opponent. If you can't clarify with your opponent, clarify it with the judge. And yeah, those are the big pieces of advice. I thought I would have a little bit more to talk about on this, but it is a little bit specific. Like I said, look at tournament lists, see what's doing well. Look at the entries in those tournament lists in your war room to get a sense for what those cards do if you're unfamiliar. Do this over time, right? Maybe like as you're going to bed, just like flip through a few cards. Even if it's only 2 or 3 at a time, you're going to be surprised how much you'll remember over time. If you're, I don't know if some people are more audio listeners or learners. I don't know. Everybody's an audio listener. I don't know how best to suggest it to you if somebody can read it to you. I know this might be a little bit out there for some people, but I know I recall somebody when they were taking the judge test talked about this. But while you're driving, make sure you're the one driving, or make sure basically whoever's reading the book is not the one driving, and just have people like quiz you on stuff, right? Like what's the defense and armor of Errant's exemplar Errants 1216, in case you wonder. Just little stuff, and like you could use that for the core rules also too, right? Just have whoever, if your partner's with you, or another one of your gaming buddies or whoever, just go through on the car ride, and maybe you don't do it for the whole car ride depending on how far you're going, and just throw out there some questions like what's this, and then somebody's verbalizing it, and that if you learn that way, that might be better for you than trying to read like anybody. There's certainly people who have certain learning disorders that make learning purely through reading very difficult. I think there's still, I don't know whatever happened to them working on the Alexa War Room, but if they do ever actually get that going again, you could do that. Just ask Alexa to tell you what the stats are, and you get the same sort of idea. And you won't be saying it; she will. But you could have even possibly like guess in your head, like, oh well, they're this, and then ask and see if you're right. Yeah, and sometimes if it's something really tricky, try to find a video of somebody playing it, or hop into like the Facebook group or any of the other forums where it's being discussed, and see if somebody else like talked about it. Maybe you'll maybe you'll be able to find some stuff there. So anyway, that we'll keep this one a little bit on the that's about a normal length, maybe a little shorter. But if there's any follow-ups on this, please feel free to comment, throw out some questions into the Discord or Facebook. Love to have a lengthier discussion on this, and share a video out there on social media, and hit the subscribe button, and we will see you later.